Space Mobile Podcast.
We just basically turn their phone and be seamless, regardless of where you are. We don't want the user even to know that it's connected by satellite. Listen, the opportunity that we have is very, very, very large.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How you doing, man?
I'm all right. Thanks
Are you
hosting.
of course. Are you feeling a bit of loss of gravity with the share price this week or last week or everything? Man, it's been nuts.
Yeah, it has been nuts. No, it's been fun, man. I just so everyone knows, I reached out to Jacob to just start up the space. I'm actually driving. I dropped off one of our little ones to sleepaway camp, but I've got 3 hours left. And so I figured what better way to kill time than just start a space and just hang out. But yeah, no, it's been fun. I've been having a hard time sleeping because I just had this anticipation waking up the next day or checking the price like at 4 a.m. or whatever. So yeah, what an exciting time. It's nuts. What about you?
Yeah, man, it's been crazy watching everything just go up and up and up. I'm like waiting for the day where it's gonna all turn red, but it hasn't happened yet. Yeah, I got screwed up on ASTS, so my position's reduced a bunch. So I'm happy for it, but it's not as good as it could have been if I didn't touch anything. So I'm a little bit kicking myself. Yeah, I sold cover calls, got underwater, sold or bought puts to try to save it because I was like, oh, it's so overbought, and then that made it worse, and then I saw out of everything, and I had to reduce my position because of it. But such is life.
It's tough because I think you can time those things until you can't, right? And so they'll work for a while, and then people get kind of complacent, and they're like, "Oh, it worked before. I'll do it again." And then, unfortunately, this time around, all the ingredients were there for this massive re-rating we're having. Which I was talking about it with Kook. I just got off talking with Kook a little while ago, and you know, I know Kevin Mack has written about this, about it seems to be short covering, which there's clearly some of that going on for sure. But I think to me, it's so orderly. It feels like some large institutions, I don't know how many, but it seems like there are some folks out there, some institutions that are VWAPing into a big position. Because every day it's like, at the open, it's kind of funny because like you see shorts try to pound the stock. They did a pretty good job yesterday, you know, got down to 43 and they got completely smoked. And then today you saw someone trying to get the party started again. The stock was off. And then lo and behold, like whoever those institutions are that are VWAPing going long, their programs kicked in, and then the stock like never looked back. It just kept grinding higher and higher and higher, which that's kind of been the routine for the last few days. So, yeah, it's pretty interesting. But I hear you. Like I was looking at Reddit, and there's a number of people that were upset because they sold calls against their position at whatever, like in the 30s or 40s, and then they missed out. Which I think, like, if that's something that you plan on doing, it definitely makes sense from time to time, but you know, maybe not for your entire position. But also when we were in this weird place, which I've talked about before, where volatility was like at a near low and short interest is really high, and there's just all these catalysts coming up. It's like you're just kind of asking for to get called away. But yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. That sucks.
I mean, it's all right. It's not like I'm completely blown out, but yeah, I decided to move when the calls were taken away. I decided to move a bunch of it into Rocket Lab calls. So I'm
okay.
happy. So I mean, the premiums were so low on it at the point.
Yeah.
And I saw like this big cup handle forming that everybody kept saying. So I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's just go and throw it into this for a little while. I didn't expect the ASTS would still just be driving up after that. That was Friday when I moved a bunch. So So I mean, I'm still like, it's still been a great week. I'm like, my portfolio is all time high, so I'm not like complaining. It's just like my
Yeah.
position is a lot smaller than it was in ASTS, which is still, I mean, still good. It's just wow, yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I don't know. It's like I don't know. I guess honestly, if even if I hadn't done the covered calls the week before, I probably would have done them last week and would have been blown out right now. Like I don't see myself. I couldn't have seen myself thinking the stock is up at 53. I guess so. Like maybe I didn't have the conviction is really what happened. So I mean, it's my own fault.
Yeah.
But so I'm not like, I don't want to like, this is by no means me ragging on ASTS by any means. I'm really happy for it. It's just like, wow, I personally was never, was never in my range of thought it would go up that fast.
Yeah, I think some somebody or I've seen like a few people make comparisons to Palantir, and I was talking about it with Kook just a little while ago, and I feel like Palantir is like this like nebulous stock that, oh, people, it's big data, they do some type of analysis, but no one really could wrap their arms around it or ascribe like real strategic value to it. And then lo and behold, like once people started figuring out that there's real military use cases and the company is, getting these large awards, then it became more concrete. And then all of a sudden that stock re-rated. I mean, yeah, it just went vertical. And so I kind of wonder if that's happening right now, where people originally were like, this AST Space Mobile is like, commercial broadband connectivity to, consumer subscribers, but then now people are re-rating it for the military use cases, which are really potentially as big as, the commercial use cases. And so, and it's interesting because I think, and I'm sure people on this space have recognized or have got this too, but for people that you've talked to over the last 3, 4, 5 years about AST Space Mobile, and probably a majority of them have dismissed it. They're just like, oh, okay, that sounds interesting. And then you might have gotten calls or pinged from those same people who reach out to you when the stock was down and be like, hey, what happened there? It's kind of like a told you so type of moment. But then now you're getting calls from people who are either congratulating you or they're saying, damn it, I missed it. Like, why didn't I, I should have done something. And it's kind of like now reaching this escape velocity of awareness. I don't know. I mean, I guess I wonder if other people are getting that. But like, again, I was talking about it with Cook today, and he was saying how a number of people that he had introduced to the stock were calling him, complaining that they unfortunately either didn't pull the trigger or they did, and then they flipped it for a small profit. They can, that was good enough.
Yeah, I mean, so like a few people I talked to about it, like my old coworkers and stuff, like I asked them this week, I was like, hey, you guys still hold on to ASTS? Because I was pumping them to push, like to buy into that harder than I was Rocket Lab back in January when it was down, when I first started my position in it. And so like I was pumped that and a lot of them had already sold, and they sold when it dropped, we got up to like 30 something and dropped back down, and a lot of them sold then, and I was like, you idiots. I don't know, other people I knew like sold it in the 20s and stuff too. So like I don't, yeah, I mean it's hard if they don't like didn't do the research. And what I've kicked myself is like I've poured into the research on it too, and so we'll see. I don't know. I'm not like wishing for. I guess I personally, selfishly, I'm wishing for a pullback, but I don't want like that's just whatever. It doesn't matter. My wish is into the ether, but I got a position in it, and I'm happy hanging on to that. So I'm not touching like those shares are no long is a long only shares. So
yeah, I mean, a pullback would be healthy and natural, but the question, of course, is always, a pullback from where? And what's the count now? Are we up like 15 out of 16 days or something? It's pretty.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I think it is 15 out of 16 days. It's nuts. And that one day was such a little and it was completely erased the next day. And it's not even like little 2% gain day. It's like 5-10% gain days. It's just Especially the last 2 days. It's just It's incredible to watch. It's cool. So, yeah, even having a
Yeah,
seat
I
of
feel
this is
like
cool.
I do think like there is an element, as I had mentioned before, like I think there are some institutions that are probably VWAPing in because that's what it definitely feels like outside of any short covering. But then I do I can see scenarios where there's also maybe things are a bit leaky. Like if the company is doing some stuff interesting around defense work, like perhaps, I mean, whenever you're doing things around the government, obviously we all know, um, look at like Nancy Pelosi or Tommy Tuberville, these politicians, like they all get the heads up of what's going on. And so I do wonder if there's a little bit of that kind of spilling into it. And then of course, like the other speculation too of potential strategic investments. But um, it is, I mean, on the one hand, like it is uncanny how strong the stock has been. And then on the other hand, if you look at a lot of, high risk, high growth names, they've done pretty well. Not all of them, but a few have done quite well in the last few days. But I think Katsi pointed it out too. Like it seems like the likely Golden Dome beneficiaries have done pretty well over the last, call it, 2 weeks. So maybe that's kind of what's pricing in.
Yeah, maybe. Like I keep waiting for like the RFPs or something to come out around those projects so I can see more what's going to be in it. But yeah, like you're right. Somebody's got to know something. It seems like that. But like I don't know. I mean, ASTS is like is the unicorn for sure of the space stocks. So it's like they're outperforming the sector, or if you want to call it the sector, by a lot. So it's more than just. I mean, it could be also the defense stuff, could be also some of the short covering. I feel like it's a combination of things, but it's cool. It's awesome. Like I don't know. I'm like just blown away by it. So we'll see. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's good. I know somebody just wanted to request in to talk, but I don't know if they're gonna jump on or not. Um, did you? I
Yeah,
guess you
if
have been
anyone
driving.
wants to call.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So if anybody wants to jump on and ask questions, go for it. You got Katsy's undivided, not Katsy's, sorry, Anpanman's undivided attention. Freudians.
Or if you want to just come up and tell us a crazy story,
Yeah,
that's good too.
that's good.
Because I've heard quite a few crazy stories over the last few days, and people have reached out and yeah, just shared their life changing, story on AST, which I think is pretty cool. But yeah, if anyone wants to come up, but sorry, I cut you off.
Oh, you're good. I'm waiting for the request to come in. I know somebody was there. Somebody was there, and I didn't click it fast enough. So hopefully they can still request in. Um, I guess you've been driving. You didn't see it. It was great. I'm just gonna slightly change topics, but the rocket
Yeah.
last at like 12:40, it was up at 34:24, and then in like 5 minutes it dropped down to like 33. And so I don't know, it's not that big of it, but it was like a 2% drop in a 5 minute like period, and it was kind of weird to like erase the entire gains of the afternoon, which is kind of annoying. But I don't know, that felt like something shorts cover. I don't know if that's a thing, but maybe you could when you get a chance later you can look at it. But
Well, it could be related to options volume. If someone put on a trade and then sometimes it like triggers algos, which then can cause a big jerk up or jerk down. But yeah, I don't know. I've been driving, so I haven't been able to look at much. The only things I've been able to do today is put out professional athletes with the appropriate jersey numbers, and that's it. Which has been fun. And then of course, like the last one I put away is Brian Urlacher of Chicago Bears, who's number 54. And then, of course, an astute Space Mobile investor was like, when are we doing Wayne Gretzky? Which, as some of you guys know, Wayne Gretzky, the all-time great, he's number 99. So I don't know. I feel like Wayne Gretzky could be in the cards at some point in the coming months, but we'll see.
did you see Cook put up the guy from I don't know what the name of the character is, but it was he from some Squid Games. Yeah, it's 250.
Like cheap, $250.
That's great.
250. That was great.
Hey Jacob, can you hear me?
Yeah. What's up, John? Go for it.
Hey, Anpanman, thank you so much for everything that you do. this is definitely been a big game changer. Um, I guess my
Yeah, you're welcome.
I guess my backstory is, I used to work in consulting, before the pandemic and during the pandemic, so I could never invest in individual stocks. And when I got out, I started following you. Uh, and I first invested, I forgot the name of the healthcare company out of Florida that you had recommended.
Oh, that was brutal.
Yeah, so
Yes.
I lost a bunch of money and I was like, man, like never trust these people on Twitter. Like, even though I have the background of doing the analysis and looking at the statement, I was like, man, I was such a dumbass. And like, how did I lose so much money? And, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But then, you started talking about, ASTS, and then they were just like the space mob, right? Like back in 2022, I started investing, I think before Blue Walker 3, so about 5 or 6 months before Blue Walker 3, went through all the ups and downs. And it's been great. Like, it's life-changing money in the sense, you're able to pay off your student loans, you're able to save up for your family. So I really appreciate everything that, everyone has done. So thank you so much. So that's my backstory. I think my question for you is, so my wife and I, in a bunch of different accounts, have like a significantly large position in terms of commons. I would say in the tens of thousands of common shares. And in my play account, I typically dabble with options. Could you just like spend some time explaining, because, for the longest time, we would see catalysts and the stock price wouldn't respond. And now it feels like, catalysts are coming, but they haven't been announced and the stock price is so up. So if you could just help understand that dichotomy. And at the same time, like, what would you do in a situation like this, right? Like, obviously, I'm not touching my commons because I absolutely keep this going to $500 a share. But then, when you think about options, right? Like, just like money on the side, right? How would you play options in this sort of a setting? So anything that you can share would be appreciated. And Jacob, thanks so much for setting this up.
Yeah. No, thanks for coming out. That's really cool. So the healthcare company you were talking about is Cano Health, which seemed like a very good investment and did okay, but then the company got over leveraged and did a number of acquisitions that were disastrous. And there was a last hurrah where they were almost going to be acquired by Humana, or I think it was I forgot who it was United Health. But anyway, that company ended up going bankrupt. And so I think I lost, we talk about like high risk, like D-SPAC names. I think I lost like 1.5 or maybe almost $2 million on that one. That was really painful. And so in investing, the old adage, if you're not losing money somewhere, you're not taking enough risk. I took too much risk on that name. So unfortunately, I'm sorry to hear you lost money on that, as did others as well. But on AST, I think, so if you're, in terms of upcoming catalysts, I mean, I did a post like recently of all the things that are expected in the coming months, which I think are big positives. And as we talk about like our big unlocks in terms of de-risking the story, especially the initial block 2 bluebirds that will go up, that will help de-risk the story. And I think that's part of the reason why you're seeing some of the anticipation now where people are getting ahead of that. That's why the stock has performed quite well. But I think, for anybody, if you have a large position in this company, depending on what your financial situation is, if you're young and you're still working and you have income, then you can probably take a bit more risk than somebody who's older, who is looking close to retirement, right? And so, not that I'm giving financial advice, but I think just keeping in mind, especially if you have very large gains, it's always good to take some profits, and at a minimum, rule of thumb is like take out your cost basis, like when you've initially invested. The other thing to think about is, capital gains as well, right? So if you can manage, your exposure where you're trying to get everything towards capital gains, or for example, you're trading in a tax advantaged account, like a retirement account, that can be helpful. But I think, for people who buy and sell, for quick trades versus like, I think a lot of us who've just bought positions in ASTM just held over the long term and averaged down, you're able to compound, as we're seeing now, you're able to compound wealth much faster because you're not, if you hold something for less than a year and you're looking to pay and you pay short-term capital gains on that chops out a big leg of your capital. And then if you're looking to, you might make 5 or 10% or whatever it is, whatever your target is of trading stuff around in commons. But over the long run, if the stock is doing well, it's oftentimes better to just buy and hold. But yeah, I think it's important to set aside money, like your initial cost basis, and of course, setting aside money for taxes to pay that. I've known quite a few people that, out of the first SPAC bubble who had a ton of gains and sold, that then reinvested immediately and basically lost all that money, but then had huge tax bills because of the timing of that. They had huge tax bills that they had to pay, and they were upside down. So, that when it comes to taxes, like, don't gamble with that money. Like, make sure you set aside enough for that. On your question about options, I think it's important that people understand, like, I don't trade options regularly. I do from time to time when it seems like the timing is right. I mean, in options, like, if you're to go long, you need to have a very good sense of like where a price is going to be and the timing. I mean, those are critical. And the market, from a macro perspective, can make a sucker out of anyone, right? Like, you might be right on those things, but then the macro backdrop may overwhelm whatever thing you're betting in. And so you may be wrong from that point of view, or volatility may change, right? That volatility is an important input into option pricing. So you might be long really high, expensive, high volatility premium calls, and then maybe the event happens and you were right on price and timing, but then vol collapses and you actually don't make money or you end up losing money. So I think it's important, like, if you're playing options, to be opportunistic. Like, if you're long options over the long run, it's like going to Vegas. Like, you're going to lose money. Like, that's almost pretty much a guarantee. But if you're using them judiciously at the right times, where you're looking to get some leverage and you feel really good about the situation and you're not going on margin, and you're using options in a smart way, perhaps to construct trades that are better risk rewards, then they can be a very useful tool, right? So, like, ahead of this big run that we've had, I took like short dated call option positions just because vol was really cheap and short interest was at all-time highs, and borrow rates was at all-time high too. And then we have all these catalysts, and it's like, oh, well, your options are cheap and there's all these great things that are happening, and the stock was chopping like in the mid-20s. And so, hey, I'll take some like calls on June calls out of the money and see what happens. And so, those did well. And so I think it's important to have a plan, and like, if you're thinking about utilizing options, but size them where if they go to zero, it's not gonna be a big deal to you. And also take profits. Like, options, you can be up big one day, but because of decay or the stock price, when it does pull back and volatility comes back down, that big winning trade one day can turn into a losing trade the next day, or within a few hours or a few minutes. And so the key thing, though, is like, if you're trading options, you need to be at a computer or on your phone, have clear access to that, because and unlike owning commons where you can just kind of sit back and do whatever you're doing in your daily life, if you have options, you need to be monitoring those like a hawk, right? And so if you don't have time to monitor position, like, definitely don't start one. The other thing is, when you do have profits, I think the rule of thumb still applies as well, like being able to take out your cost basis at a minimum, or having a plan. I mean, definitely having a plan, like, once I get to this level, I'll take out a third, or monetize a third, monetize a half, whatever it is, right? But I think that for options, that one of the biggest problems that people have is like, when they have profits, they think that there's going to be even more, and they just keep riding them. And then and something happens, like tariffs happen, or the initial part of this Israeli-Iran conflict happens, and the market pulls back, and then all of a sudden you're down on the options, and then maybe if they're shorter dated, they expire worthless. So, yeah, I think if they're good tools, but you've got to be very disciplined in how you use them, and know, like, definitely have a plan. Like you have a certain time frame of when you're going to hold them. If the thing doesn't happen by then, like, you're going to close out, and you're going to risk a certain amount. And if you hit a certain profit threshold, at a minimum, these are the levels where I'm taking profits to cash out of that position. But I don't know. Does that answer your question? Is that helpful?
No, super helpful. Thank you so much, Anpanman. And a side question for you is, a related question is, given all the Musk influencers talking about Starlink over the last couple of days, any thoughts on what's coming? Like, in my head, it's probably like the FirstNet announcement, or I don't know, something else. Yeah. Any thoughts on that? Any speculation?
That's a good question. I mean, there's a FirstNet webinar on the 26th, but I don't know if that would prompt cause there to be a definitive agreement with FirstNet or a multi-year contract. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely things that are ripe, that are very ripe to be announced, whether it's a Verizon definitive agreement, or we find out that a combination of FM1 is fully built and tested and ready for shipment, or it already has shipped, or it has shipped and is already landed in India. Like, that could come out. There could be any number of this, government contracts, maybe expansion of those awards could come out, or something around Golden Dome. I know it's early, but I recently had talked with the company just to catch up conversation, and that I similar to like the quarterly call, I think there's this level of confidence that they will be involved somehow in Golden Dome. I mean, obviously, like, no one knows for sure, but that timing, I mean, who knows? Like, that could drop any time as well. So yeah, I mean, it's your speculation is as good as mine. But it does feel like, just given the stock price movement, it feels like maybe there's people that know, or maybe something's coming. Because I think I'm surprised too at how strong the stock price has been over the last, several days. And part of it, I think people should understand, like, you have a very large short interest, and all of a sudden some of those folks decide to cover their short, and the stock moves up because of it. It's not as if, like, that's not necessarily a short squeeze. That's basically people buying back the shares that they shorted, and the stock getting back to a level of where it should have been had those people not shorted the stock. So, one question that I've asked myself is, like, where would AST Space Mobile be at a steady state? Like, if there were no shorts in the stock, like if there was, putting aside the convertible ARB who have to be short stock, against bonds. But let's say theoretically, if the short interest is at 0, where would the stock equilibrium be? Like, would it be at 60, 70, 80? I don't know. But yeah, I think any number of those things could drop in the next few days, weeks, but there's a lot of potential catalysts. And, it's funny, when I did catch up with management, one of the things that we both kind of joked about was, like, back in the day, it could be 2-3 months before, between like a PR or something interesting that was announced, because, the company was at a very early stage of development and executing, but there wasn't really much they could share with people. Whereas now there's so many irons in the fire, whether it's on the commercial side, government, or military. And so I think we've been spoiled, quite candidly, for the last few weeks of all the news, either directly from the company or the movements we've seen in the FCC docket. And so now as Kook has pointed out in his spaces, or as we talked about in the space catch up every week, there's not too much to talk about. But yeah, now's a time where there's, for the people who, I guess it was maybe it was a month or 2 months ago where they were lamenting that the stock is sideways and there wasn't much going on. Those people aren't complaining anymore because there's a lot going on. But yeah.
Thank you, Jacob. Back to you.
Yeah, thanks, man. Hey, Chris, I see you jumped on, man. How's it going?
Well, I just came on to congratulate the Space Mob. I mean, y'all. So I started covering ASTS not too long ago, and I was just frankly floored by the amount of research that you guys have done. And Anpanman, thank you for coming on that day with Amit. And I think really that laid the long-term bull case out for this company. And especially if you look at the business model, I think that's the key thing that really, really intrigued me, because like one of the things that I do when I invest is I try to find business models that are up and to the right, that have very little risk from from things waffling. The economy tends to go up, down, left, right, but there are certain business models that are going to be up and to the right. You look at something like waste management. That is an up and to the right business. It's very hard to find businesses like that, and especially getting in on it at such a low valuation that you can actually make a material great return over a long period of time. I know some of you guys have been in here since like the $2 and $3, and you guys deserve that 25x return, which, by the way, I don't even think Warren Buffett has gotten over the last like 30 years. So, it just goes to show that sometimes if you do those in-depth research, you'll get rewarded significantly. So just like I said, I came on for that. And once again, the amount of research that this community does is just, I'm floored by the amount of crowdsourcing that can actually happen. While some of these other, more institutional focused people, they'll hire professionals to go and do analysis, and they don't even come up remotely with what you guys came up with. So like I said, I just came on to basically glaze you guys a little bit while I'm actually enjoying, because I actually bought a lot of call options on this, and the last few weeks have been
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for coming up. I enjoyed that space we did with Amit, and then I really enjoyed hearing your perspective, because quite candidly, I've been listening to myself for way too long. And so it's always refreshing to hear other people's perspectives, especially folks that are newer to the story. And so that was great. But yeah, the great thing about this company, and quite candidly, like a few others that are out there, when you do have a large retail following, but more importantly, I think a lot of institutions can and do look down on retail investors. But what I think people misunderstand is that oftentimes a lot of folks who are in the retail investing community come from different professions and different backgrounds. Helps when working collaboratively together, helps in developing really solid research. So I think you're right on that. But yeah, no, it's I'm happy to hear that you have invested and are doing well. It wasn't always like this. Some of the people who did buy it too were also averaging down because they had bought it 10, 12 or wherever it was. So that was a pretty brutal journey. But I think what's interesting is I was talking about it with Kook earlier today. Had it not been for some of those difficulties and going through that period, but and also being forced to really dig in terms of research and having a level of conviction, like most folks wouldn't have ended up with these really, quite candidly, like oversized, overexposed positions down at those levels, and then had the conviction to hold on, not selling at 8, 10, 12, 20, 30, or whatever it is, to see where we are today, which is pretty nice.
Yeah, for me, a lot of the positions that I have right now are in options, but I plan on converting them to just plain shares and just putting them into a nice long-term portfolio. Because, like I said, if you find these businesses at an early stage and you make a meaningful position, you don't have to look at them for the next 10, 15, 20, even maybe half a decade away. I think a lot of people, they keep repositioning their portfolios to try to navigate certain times in the economy. But once again, if the business model is strong and you can see it moving up and to the right, just like how American Tower was in the year 2000, ask anyone in the year 2025 how they feel about their returns. And trust me, you've outperformed the market significantly. And all you really needed to know was, okay, what is this company's business model and how is it going to generate revenue and how is it going to reward shareholders for holding? And from what I can see, the path to cash flow and dividends is immense. So even though right now everyone's looking at it like, oh, this thing's run up, and should I buy in now? And I just tell people very simply, like, okay, this is a $15 billion market cap company. And, just because the market cap may seem elevated, remember the share counts are always there. So as this thing cash flows, they buy back shares, they issue dividends. Your total return is what you're going to get from that. And this thing is going to have crazy gross margins that they're going to be able to reinvest in growing their constellation and also doing additional free cash flow towards buybacks and dividends. So like I said, as from a business model standpoint, this is one of those businesses you put in a long-term portfolio. You don't look at it every day. You just, when it goes up, it's like, hey, great. When it goes down a little bit, like, whatever. And like I said, you don't look at it until 2035 and, it'll be a meaningful part of your wealth.
Yeah, I 100% I agree. It's there was an OG investor who's not with us anymore, Steve Larison, and he lamented the days that he had sold Amazon many years ago, and he would tell us over and over again. And for people who had weak knees holding AST, he's like, I went through it with Amazon where I sold it way too early. I'm not doing it again, and this company is special, and I'm holding it. I'm going to see it through. And so, I agree. I think when you find a unique growth company like AST Space Mobile, the worst thing you can do is keep staring at it and be force yourself to sell out too early or do something versus, like we always joke, it's probably better to put yourself in a coma and just don't look at the company and then revisit it 10 years from now and you'll be happy.
Absolutely.
Hey, while I got some more people jump up on stage, but I got one person asking a question if you're good. I know you probably can't read the comments right now, but I'll try to regurgitate. This is from Count of Gamble, and he was asking about, he says, oh, wait, that's not it. Sorry. Oh, okay. It says, are the drops that open a short attempt to bring it down or tapping of the ATM seems orchestrated every morning? And then he was referring to the convertible notes from the January ATM. And he says, we're at 10 of 20 days over 35, the 35 conversion price. So I don't know if you can do anything with that. Sorry, I didn't quite understand it.
That's okay. So maybe go backwards on the convertible notes. Those should have no impact on the stock. If anything, I think we Kevin back and Cook talked about it a bit. There's probably some level of covering from the converts because those guys are probably on what we call like a one delta, a full hedge on the underlying call option in the convertible. And so that happened, probably closer to the low 40s, but now there shouldn't be any impact on their hedging. If anything, there probably has been over the last few days some of the convert arbs unwinding that trade, meaning they covered stock and sold the bonds because I think those bonds, as you move up, it starts to cheapen, and because the borrow costs on the short side is going up, it's not a good idea to hold onto that trade. And so what you're probably saying is some of those guys actually sell the bonds to fundamental holders or fundamental long only buyers and then covering stock. So them covering is probably helped fuel some of this move up. But the question about ATM usage, so the company is they've now become very good at this. They're probably better traders than I am. So I don't think the company, when they are using the ATM, they're not doing it on days where they're going to move the stock. If it's a quiet day, they might look to do, single digit percentage of VWAP, only if the stock is up. They certainly aren't going to do that at the open. And as we saw, I guess in the 13D filing recently for a Bell, I think they raised if you assume that they basically were at VWAP since the previous share count, which was filed, I think in mid-May, they probably raised about $280 million during this entire move up, which is pretty crazy. And given the most recent volumes that have happened, they've probably that's closer to 300, low 300s. As some of you know, the ATM that they filed was 500 million in size. And so I think, especially at these stock prices, they should certainly be raising some quantum of capital, just given that we've got a number of things that do require capital, whether that's getting production ramped up, paying for materials for new Bluebird satellites, but also just having the ability to raise money at this level is great. I think it's just a prudent thing to do given the stage of where the company is. And then who knows, there might be some other interesting spectrum deals for them to do in other regions outside of just Locado. But so no, I don't think it's the company. They're not going to be using the ATM when the stock is down. Like they'll be using it on a strong day where the stock is up. But I do think in terms of is it potential shorts or algos? I do think it is. Like the reason why I say that, and sometimes people are like, "Well, how would you know?" That doesn't make any sense. On Monday and Tuesday, especially Monday, you saw pretty aggressive selling. I think it was pre-market, but then at the open, the stock went all the way down to like 43. And I think if I was a short seller, I'd be pretty desperate, and you'd be willing to, trade a few thousand shares to try to dictate the price and hopefully get kind of a spiral going or some stop losses getting hit and then forcing the stock price to go lower. Because I know like for hedge funds, like oftentimes, whether it's pre or post market, you might see people buying stock hoping to make things go up, or shorting stock or selling stock to make, to kind of influence sentiment, which I think for any individual investor, when you see stock price movements pre or post market or overnight, it does have some psychological effect. And so there is a reason for that, that people would do that. So just like, I think it was like the Q3 quarterly update in 2024. This is like after the launch. No, it was a Q2 update. That morning, like after the call was done, the stocks had sold off a little bit after the call, but then that morning, somebody tried to walk the price down, and it wasn't for that many shares. Maybe it was like 10 or 20,000 shares. Like they walked the price down, but then right at the open, the stock immediately gapped up, and then it was like no looking back, because clearly whoever was trying to like manipulate stock, like they got caught, and then of course whether it was shorts or institutions, their programs started kicking in to buy stock because they wanted to get long. And so yeah, when you see that type of movement in the morning, pre-market, and then at the open, if it's a battleground stock like ours is, and there's a heavy short interest, people definitely do try to play games to try to influence the stock for the rest of the day. And it oftentimes it does work, because like you'll see on Twitter people complaining like somebody must be manipulating the stock, or the company must be using the ATM, and then that kind of like snowballs, like especially if the stock isn't doing well or it's trading sideways and people get impatient. I think for folks who are interested, it is clear, like, algos do follow sentiment. Like on Bloomberg, for example, there's a function called TREN, trend, and you can see what social velocity is, like what sentiment is, whether it's positive or negative. And, algos they'll plug into Bloomberg APIs or Twitter APIs, and they'll definitely gauge sentiment, and that will dictate kind of how they trade things. And so all this stuff actually does matter. And for retail, like for you and I, like it's also helpful too, because I think when, again, going back like a month to 2 months ago, when there was a lot of people who were upset because the stock was trading sideways, I guess sometimes we joke, like you can tell who's long short dated options because it allowed us, the folks who are whining the most when things aren't going their way. But that being able to kind of read sentiment from investors, whether it's in this stock or other stocks, that can give you a good sense of like, hey, things are maybe perhaps too euphoric, or things are at a low in terms of sentiment. If you look at sentiment right now for AST, one could argue like things are quite euphoric, which it's kind of funny because like normally I try not to be too euphoric because I always have like some level of superstition of like, hey, you don't want to like celebrate the touchdown before you actually get into the end zone or any of that stuff. But this time around, it's like, you know what, it's time to celebrate because like we're above 50. It's a big milestone. I think there's a lot of positive things that are coming that are undeniable. Like you can't, we have these catalysts that are going to like a sledgehammer, going to slap people in the head. And so even if we do have some level of drawdowns from here, to have, for example, a launch of Bluebird satellites every 30 to 60 days, like that's going to be really tough for anybody who's short the stock or skeptical, or if you're long, like it's just something to look forward to every month or month and a half or 2 months. And so having that cadence, I think is great. And so I think we're kind of at this inflection point where everything we've been waiting for is now finally coming to fruition, and it's great. So anyway, now I'm rambling, but I'll just pause there.
No, you're good, man. It's exciting. There was somebody who was asking about what if Blue Origin could deliver or not, and I responded, but I told him like if Blue Origin can, F9 can, like I don't know, like, and then let's this is me gonna, because the launch area is the only area I feel like I'm comfortable in talking about the stocks. But if like Blue Origin has like significant problems and this is 18 months down the line or something like that, and they still can't keep up with the demand, F9 is going to fill in that space. I wouldn't be surprised if the company would look at another third or fourth launcher at that point either. Like I feel like they're going to have the capital to make the move that they need to get the satellites up. If there was some like long-term problem with Blue Origin, but I that's just an outside thing. I don't know. I don't feel like they're all their eggs are not one basket with launchers. That's all I was getting at.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think Blue Origin, obviously Spaces it's taking that time. They were successful in their New Glenn launch, but then they obviously didn't land it. I'd heard some feedback that there was only a few minor things that prevented that potential first landing, but who knows, right? Like I think the key thing is that they need to get more launches up, whether they land them or not. I mean, it would be great if they can, if they can return the boosters, but the company seems very confident in Blue Origin and their capability. So, and yeah, I mean, they have multiple providers, so they have Israel. I don't know if they've had any discussions about Israel potentially expanding into more launches, but then they do have, of course, SpaceX Falcon 9. And so that's why it's nice to see the company raising some additional capital, because like if you do need to backfill, then you can pay for those. And I think, there's always been this debate amongst the community, is launch capacity constrained? And I think as some people have finally recognized over the last few months or weeks, SpaceX actually has capacity, but they just choose, when there's not enough customers, they just choose to fill that capacity with more Starlink satellites. But choosing between the two, a paying customer versus launching your own internal satellites, the payback of that, obviously having cash in hand now versus having to, wait for the entire constellation to pay you back to those launches over time. Like that's, I think, SpaceX would prefer to have paying customers upfront. So, so I don't view it as a big risk, but obviously it would be great if Blue Origin, New Glenn, if that program can mature and get on a regular cadence.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's the ideal. And yeah, as soon as they can start landing those boosters, that will is what will take their cadence up faster, because then they're not having to rebuild a whole new booster every time. So as soon as they start landing those, that's what is going to increase their cadence quicker. Crypto Luke, I see you've been waiting for a minute, man. Do you want to ask something?
Yeah, for sure. I just wanted to share my story, if that's okay.
Yeah, let's.
Yeah, so I was one of the SPAC guys in 2021 that Anpanman was kind of hitting on. Like, we made a lot of money. Like, personally, I was kind of all in on Virgin Galactic, and I rode that up. I did take some profits in the 30s, but then I kind of took it into other things. Thankfully, AST was one of those things. And, I was on StockTwits a lot, not too much on Twitter or X too much, but I was on StockTwits a lot. So thank you so much for posting on StockTwits, because that's where I was at those days. And then I think I just joined X like last summer as AST. It was started to go crazy and beyond our wildest dreams and everything. But yeah, I was really depressed for a couple of years because I just rode that SPAC boom all the way down because I'm super stubborn. And thankfully, I shifted most of that money, pretty much all that money eventually went into AST. So did pretty well. Not as well as some people, but, did pretty well. I'm in the 7 figures now. So pretty exciting. But yeah, it's just been an amazing story. I lost 500 shares last year, selling calls during the summer. I had just lost my job at Amazon, so I had sold some calls to go get a haircut for interviews and whatnot. And then I lost those 500 shares through the Verizon deal that all of us. But yeah, so learned my lesson. Don't sell too many calls, maybe sell a little bit, but don't sell too many, because you don't want to lose your whole position, because that's just a bad day. And then the taxes you get hit with on top of that. But yeah.
If you don't mind, I kind of want to chime in and agree with Crypto Luke there. I started investing around like $12 share price too. And I rode through it all, and I was on vacation last week. I saw it go to 35, so I called in my whole position for 42. And I bought some of them back, but a large part of my position got called away. And today I was like waiting for the dip, but I was like, fuck it, it's just a few dollars. I bought back in again at like 51. So now I have a tax bill too. My position's smaller by like 20%. And it feels like I kind of made a silly mistake, because I helped do it all, the whole down periods, flat periods, and just when we made money, I missed out a lot. But I guess I just want to say for everyone, I kind of learned my lesson, and I'm just going to hang on to it. And really, the best thing I can do here is nothing. So I was a little sad, but just felt like sharing.
Yeah, so what I try to do is, I try to go and trade something else, because I love to trade. I used to have like my Series 7 and stuff, so I love to trade. So I try not to trade AST anymore. I try to just hold on to it, but I'll go trade some other penny stocks that I want to mess around with. Rian?
Yeah, hard learned lessons.
Yeah, and then I went to the launch last September. I didn't meet everyone. There's so many people at the launch, but I got to meet a couple of cool people. Like, I think I met Awesome Beast and a couple others. But yeah, anyway, it was just been such a fun thing to be a part of. Appreciate everyone doing the spaces. I like to join from time to time, and just get the DD. And because a lot of these guys, they're so much smarter than I am. Like, I'm not completely retarded, but they're so much smarter. Like, I would never have found like a lot of this research without a lot of you guys. So thank you.
Yeah, it's so cool. Congratulations on making it back. I mean, I think we all went through that brutal period. Like in 2020 and 2021, like it was hard not to make money, first of all. But then when 2022 hit, it was like when rates went up and, there was inflation issues, of course. And then, all the different SPACs like went down and then of course AST was no different. But yeah, it was a tough time, like to have the conviction to hold and to add, which I think a lot of people did over that difficult period. And I'm sure there were plenty of nights where you had regrets. I mean, I certainly did for sure. But then, fast forward to today, which is why I think everybody is so elated for those that, whether you were holding for 4 years or you recently bought in, it's just like a tremendous milestone for this company that was basically a venture investment for the public markets, to actually make it through the meat grinder and is now on the cusp of commercialization, which is enormous, right? And I think even today at whatever 15 or $16 billion market cap, like it's still a relatively unknown company. But soon enough, when AT&T and Verizon roll out the data and then initial service, like it's going to be a household name that people know, which is kind of scary to think about, because then if people enjoy their experience, it's like, oh, well, how do I invest in this? And then, oh, there's this company called AT Space Mobile. Maybe I'll just throw a few shekels at that. But I think the other thing is, going back to what S was saying, like when you sell calls, like another thing is that you kind of make a decision or you take the decision making out of your hands. Cause like if you have a position you've held for 9 months, for example, and you sell calls that are, maybe a few months out, but then the stock trades through the calls, and then your stock gets called away early, then you all of a sudden have a short-term capital gains that you didn't want, right? Now you can always go back and just buy the calls back, so that doesn't happen. So you can maintain your long-term capital gains, or your path to long-term capital gains. But I mean, that's another thing that I think is that people should recognize is that, selling calls, you're basically shorting a synthetic put, right? So you're collecting insurance, and you've given away the upside in the stock. And then if something bad happens, then you wear the entire risk. So calls are not riskless. Like when you sell them against stock, it's the same as selling in the money puts. And so, just be cognizant of that. And if you've got something that you want as long-term capital gains, and then it is long-term capital gains, and then it gets exercised, all of a sudden you have to restart the clock again with a new position, which can suck, right? So, but yeah, thanks for sharing your experience. I think it's good for people to hear, real world, experiences. Is driving.
Yeah, if we can save one person, totally worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for coming up.
Yeah. So at least, I mean, I feel this make me feel better anyways. I'm not the only one it did. So there was a couple other questions on here. Some people were asking, sorry, I lost it.
That's all right. I did want to mention that StockTwits is a crazy place. Like, I do go on there from time to time, but it's just too crazy. I don't know. Information.
Wow, is it just me, or did anybody else not hear him? It's just me. I'll shut up.
Yeah, I think he's cutting out.
Anpanman, you're cutting out. Maybe you're losing service. A little better. Keep trying. No, it's
okay. Let me.
no.
Enjoying. Yeah,
I got no. I hear you now. Wait, don't leave. You're good. Oh, I hear you now. Okay. Everything's fine.
Okay. No, I was just saying that StockTwits is a funny place because like it's a bunch of noise, and I don't get how people can be on there because it's like a zoo, unless I guess you filter stuff by popular posts. But funny enough, like to evangelize about the company, I used to be a bit active there as well, and then that's actually how I met Kook, because that's where he lived on StockTwits, and then we randomly kind of chatted with each other, and then that's how we kicked off our friendship. So, and I know Katsi spends a lot of time there as well. But yeah, are there any other questions?
Yeah, I got one. Somebody asked this.
So I want to come up.
Or yeah. By the way, if anybody's just joined or joined late, if you guys want to jump on stage, tell a story about what's like the elation for anything else like that, or just want to ask Anpanman something, feel free to request in. And while we're waiting for the next person, I see somebody asked. It says, "Can you please talk about tools you use for trading or gathering inputs?" I know you talk about Bloomberg sometimes.
Yeah, Bloomberg. I use Bloomberg, but it's probably not for everybody. I pay for it because I'm just so used to it, and it's very powerful. But it's expensive. It's like $40,000 a year. So, however, if you do want tools that are similar and are very powerful, one platform I recommend is Koyfin, Koyfin. Koyfin's pretty good at analyzing, pulling up financial information for companies, also providing you with like estimates, like Wall Street estimates for projections, things like that. But and also news too. But yeah, Bloomberg is like it's got an arcane interface, but it's really powerful. So that's probably the biggest tool that I use. Then of course, Excel or Google Sheets to lay out financials and financial analysis. But yeah, I would recommend people using Koyfin if you want to do screens and analyze companies. That's a really great tool, and it's pretty reasonable. It's probably I haven't looked at it in a long time, but maybe it's like $60 or $70 a month.
Sweet. NKIC jumped on stage. You want to ask something or talk about something?
Yeah, I just had, so I'm a small fry. I'm on the exact opposite side of crypto, Luke. I just got into it about 15 days ago. So I bought about 12 options contracts and I have 350 shares. So I'm definitely on the small side. But I have been, going down the rabbit hole of reading so much about it, and more so on Reddit than on Twitter. But my question is more so about where this company in 5 to 10 years, I've been reading online that it could potentially be the main space connection for all, kind of interconnection as far as like telecommunications and your connection through your cell phone service. But wouldn't that make it more of a disruptor to like T-Mobile and Verizon instead of partnering with them? Like, what is the vision if it gets to like these kind of meteoric $1,000 a share kind of? I guess just a quick synopsis of what is the goal with it.
Yeah, no. So the company is not in competition with the MNOs. They partner with MNOs, and so in the US, that's AT&T and Verizon, and then in Europe, that's Vodafone. In Japan, Rakuten, and there's 50 other global MNOs that they work with, and so the business model is that they actually the MNO controls customer. They're basically like a wholesaler, right? So they provide the constellation that can utilize the MNO's spectrum, and the MNO keeps control of their customer. So imagine like if you are a Verizon customer and you want satellite broadband connectivity anywhere, then you might end up, Verizon will say, hey, you can pay an extra, I don't know, $10 a month or $15 a month to have this service. And then Verizon put you on the service. And then when you're out of coverage, Verizon's network, then AST Space Mobile satellite will beam connectivity to you in those dead spots, and that $10 to $15 will get split 50-50 between Verizon and AST Space Mobile. So they're not in competition. What's interesting though is that they in the US, AST Space Mobile will be providing additional, or will have access to additional spectrum. The spectrum are the airways that all your data transports from whether it's a cell tower or it's a satellite to your mobile phone. But they will have access to additional spectrum in this deal that they did with Gato, where which they will still do through a partnership with AT&T and Verizon. They will allow you to have broadband data. Even, let's say, for example, you're at a New York Jets game, right? And the cell towers are completely inundated because there's too many users there. In the future with AST Space Mobile and Legato, you'll be able to actually connect to that broadband network with the satellite in order to get coverage, even when the cell towers are completely inundated with users. Or additionally, like if there's a disaster or in your area, if cell towers go out or there's power outage or something, then you'll still be able to have connectivity with their satellite, with your phone. And so AST Space Mobile it's not a replacement of, terrestrial coverage for your cell phone, but it's in the areas where either coverage is spotty. Like, for example, if you go out to LA, there's a lot of canyons in different areas where people don't want cell towers built, where you'll be able to get coverage in those areas. But then also if you're traveling, like in a national park and there's no coverage, well, in the future, when the service is launched, you actually will have coverage in all those areas.
Right. And I was reading that it would be more like the same connection as in my home. So if I'm, up in a canyon, I can still receive pictures, calls, videos, which with Starlink, my understanding is you can.
Yeah, with Starlink right now, it's sporadic texting, whereas this is going to be full-fledged voice, data, video. Obviously, if there's a bunch of users in a given location that are all hitting the same satellite, then you might get throttled down to a degree. But I think for the most part, when people use their phones, like they want to check news, information, they might be listening to music. They're not like staring at Netflix while they're hiking in a canyon. So they might send like pictures to loved ones. And so this service is a complement to the carriers, and it'll be something that they can charge basically as like an additional feature on a monthly basis. And if you can imagine, like, let's say if you have a family and you have small kids, you always want to be connected to them, right? And so this is also for peace of mind. Like if your kids are out on a field trip and they're in a dead zone, you're going to be, I think any parent, including myself, would pay the additional $10 a month to make sure like you're fully connected with them if they have an Apple Watch or maybe you put an AirTag in their backpack or something. And so yeah, this is going to be game changing. I mean, besides just cell phones, like Internet of Things, cars, connected cars, autonomous trucks, autonomous robo taxis, whatever it is, like having full coverage all the time in broadband data is going to be critical. And so this is the solution or the problem that the company is going to solve.
Thank you so much. I'm going to drop off, and I really appreciate all the insight and the community. Really, really do.
Yeah, thanks for coming out.
Somebody wanted to plug that there's new merch and new ASTS merch or something. So go check it out.
Oh, on the website?
Still there, right? Maybe, yeah. I don't. That's what they said out to plug that there's mention there's new merch drop from ASTS.
Oh, from the company. Oh, cool. I'll have to check that out.
I on the last person that was up here, NK, I just I don't know how much you're. I know you said you were new and you're diving into stuff, and so just in case you weren't aware, I'm not saying you weren't, but the Starlink fixed terminal versus Starlink direct to cell are two different services. So I don't want people to like get confused with thinking that the first time that they use this service comes online, it's going to be comparable to like the fixed wireless dish service. It's not going to be at the same speeds initially or potentially ever, because it's not, it's same. It's the difference between being on Wi-Fi versus being on a cell phone, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here. And
yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, I mean, you will get peak speeds that could be like at 100 or 120 once the full service is up. But, it's probably going to be more like 20, 30 megabits per second, which is still pretty fast. But then that's also going to depend on how many users are in the cell as well. But then going forward, as the company iterates satellites and gets more up and densifies the network, that capacity will go up. I think Bell has talked about once massive MIMO gets incorporated into the constellation, each cell could have a capacity of 750 megabits per second, which is really fast. Yeah. I see another person has come up. Oh, sorry. Did you want to ask another question?
It was one other question. Like in West Virginia, for instance, I have T-Mobile, and I was out in West Virginia, and they were saying, "Oh, it's AT&T country out there." So I had very infrequent ability to, while I was out in West Virginia, to connect and speak to people without having Wi-Fi. So this would basically, if I had like a T-Mobile account, or if I have Verizon or something like that, it would connect to all of West Virginia. I no longer have those issues where it's a dominant like AT&T at West Virginia, New Jersey is T-Mobile. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, so the company's not working with T-Mobile; they are working with Verizon and AT&T. So, but yeah, if in the future, like if you're out in Long Island on the beach, you will have full coverage. Or if you're even on a boat a few miles off the coast, you will have cellular coverage. And then in the future, depending on how they decide to plan to cover perhaps parts of the open water like oceans, like you will have coverage. But even, for example, like on an airplane, even though you're supposed to turn off and maybe the FCC will change this, but you will be able to use your mobile phone, not on Wi-Fi, but on the cellular network via satellite while you're flying on an airplane, for example.
Wow. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hey, I see Gino had his hand raised, and then Scott.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, hi. I had a small question for Anupam, which is like just rewind back some time. How did he find this opportunity, and like how did he come across this opportunity, and how did he evaluate it to build up this conviction? And secondly, like I know which is the next next company like ASTS that he thinks so can be like this world changing. So just want to have his thoughts on three things, which is A, how did he find across this opportunity? How did he evaluate it back then when a lot of people didn't have the conviction? And three, does he have any other opportunities in his back pocket?
Yeah, so I've shared this before. It was actually by luck. I had bought stock and warrants, primarily warrants, in a company called New Providence Acquisition Corp, which was a SPAC that had yet to do a deal. I started buying this, shares and warrants on speculation of that the sponsors, given their backgrounds, that they would do a good deal. So I started buying in September of 2020, and then of course they announced a deal with AST Space Mobile in December. And so the reason why I had been buying New Providence is that given that the sponsors had some background in consumer products and then telecom, and so back then some of us were speculating in a Discord that I used to be part of for SPACs, like perhaps like New Providence will take Beyond Meats or one of the like alternative meat companies public, or perhaps like a cool consumer products company public. But then when they announced the deal in December, it was like, oh, what is this? And interestingly, my background working in the hedge fund industry as a portfolio manager, I did quite a bit of TMT investing. So I knew about the telecom landscape, and I'd actually invested in a number of spectrum situations as well. And so when I looked at the deck, the concept made a lot of sense to me. Obviously, back then, as did to many people, like, I did have some level of skepticism that they'd be able to do it. Connecting an unmodified phone to this really large satellite, could they actually make that connection? And then could they actually deliver broadband speeds? But then what got me over the initial hump, and that day, like after the deal was announced, I started buying more warrants. But what got me over the hump was just seeing the fact that the company had strategic investments from American Tower, Rakuten, Vodafone, Bell Canada. And so to me, that was a big validation point. And I remember going on Twitter and seeing some of these. I think it was Johan Weiberg, who was the now former CTO of Vodafone, but back then he was the current CTO. And Johan Weiberg is now actually a board member at AST SpaceMobile. But there was a video of him. I think this was like back in 2019 or 18, but I had found it where he had talked about working with AST SpaceMobile as early as 2018 on developing this technology. And so for me, that was like a huge validation point where you had this, Vodafone, very large MNO, the biggest owner of wireless spectrum in the world. They provide service and either directly to partner company, AT&T out in Australia, were partnered with the company. I remember reading some of the articles about how AT&T was helping develop this technology with AST, and then with the FCC started complaining. And one of the things, like, whenever you invest in the telecom sector, if competitors aren't complaining about something you're doing, then what you're doing is probably not actually worth anything or a threat. But to see, like, at that time, T-Mobile and Verizon complain about what AST SpaceMobile was doing with AT&T, I was like, oh, that's another big validation point. Like, they feel pretty threatened by it. And so it was that initial work is what got me hooked on the company, that all these strategic partners, some of who had investments, but also others that were helping develop the technology. Because, at the time, I think the company had announced too that they were working Nokia on the eNode B integration with the carrier's backend. But yeah, there was just like all these strategic partners that made sense. And so for me, that gave me enough confidence to, take basically a speculative bet on the company. But then fast forward to, I think it was January or February, I had my first conversation with the Bell. And so we talked for about, I think it was like an hour and a half. And that initial conversation, I think it's still up on Reddit because I posted it. But after speaking with him and getting to know him more, and that's what gave me more conviction to then just keep going down the rabbit hole. And so it's not as if like I put on a full-size position immediately and that was the end of it. This is something that kind of happened over the course of years where with the help of like Katsi, Kook, Steve Larison, many others, some people who were in the community but then left because they sold, or new people. I mean, it's been a never-ending kind of learning process where over time, whether I was confident, I was adding to my position back then, or there were times, of course, like when the stock was at 2 and the warrants were at 35 cents, where out of disgust and defiance, like I just kept buying. But yeah, that's kind of the backstory of like how I learned about the company and how I got, I guess, my initial conviction. But it was really over the course of time, in terms of just following the company, continue to talk with management, but also just seeing them execute, also make mistakes too, or timeline slipped, which is, quite common for any startup, but especially startups that are trying to do something as disruptive as this, that is also, space-based. It's going to be tough. But let's see. Are there any other names that I think are transformative that I'm looking at that are transformative? Not currently. I mean, this is really my key investment. I do have some smaller things that I speculate on from time to time, but not that there aren't other names out there. I'm sure there's plenty, but I just haven't had the time to really go out there and kind of drum up new ideas. So hopefully that answers your question.
Got it. Thank you so much. One last question, pretty stupid question, but do you know the story behind the A in everyone's, every ASD, diamond handler? What's the backstory behind it? I would never could understood that.
Here's the real backstory. So once upon a time, it was like 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, on FinTwit, this was like Gert Gavin and a few others who were pretty involved in SPACs. I don't know who started it, but they all put like a P, the blue circle P in their name. And it was like some type of inside joke. I forget exactly what it's for, but I saw that and I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. Like, I wonder, it'd be kind of cool if like we used the red A as our kind of design. But then I didn't do anything about it because I was like, maybe that would seem too cultish. But then there was another account, a current space mob, ASTS Moon, who then came up independently with the idea like, hey, I'm going to start this. I'm going to put a red and A in my name. It'd be cool if like everyone else does it too. And then because he started, I was like, okay, now I can adopt it because then it wouldn't look like I started this cult. It was somebody else, but I'll go along with it because I think it's really cool. And so I put in my name, and then other people put it in their name as well, and it just kind of took off. Of course, like at periods of time, it was a symbol of being. It's been a symbol of being too early in something or being dumb. When the stock was down, it's like, you guys are all chumps. But now, of course, like it's a symbol of pride that we went through this crazy journey over the years, and so far it's been great. So, but yeah, I guess it's just a symbol of solidarity that this is a cool common interest that we all have, and whenever you see it, yeah, it's just like, hey, they're shareholders too, and so it's just something that you can bond over, I guess. But that's the background.
It's a fascinating story. You're probably like one of the first few people to start like a cult or start a culture, and in that ways. But yeah, it's nice to know. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for coming up.
Hey, I know Scott was wanted to ask something next, and then I see Hayden on the deck. But just to check in with you, Anthony. Are you still good?
Yeah, I've got an hour and a half to drive still. But you know what? This is great because I'm at this age now where when I drive, I get really sleepy in the first hour and a half, and then I have to get over that hump. But this is great. Like, time's going by fast. So I'm on a 4-hour drive, and I've already 2.5 hours after talking with Kook, and then now with this space, like it's really gone by quickly. So this is great.
Thank you guys for everything. I was just kind of curious. I've been investing for a few years now. Technical question. If I'm an AT&T subscriber and I'm out in the middle of the ocean and there's no gateways, how does that signal get back to AT&T? Does it get transferred between satellites and then back down to Earth?
Yeah, so I don't think they've figured out exactly what they're going to do over water. Which Katsy, I see him in the crowd. He might be better to answer this, but I'm not sure. 'Cause you need some understanding from how what spectrum rights countries have or companies have over water, and where does like your company's spectrum rights end. But let's say theoretically that they are able to, AT&T is able to offer their service, say, over the Atlantic. These satellites have a very wide field of view, and so they should be able to talk to a ground station. So you will be able to have you will be able to talk to the satellite, and then the satellite will beam down back to the ground station. But the other alternative, if there isn't a ground station, say, that's within the field of view for the satellite, then you could, a recent thing that the company has been contemplating or testing is optical inter-satellite links. And so similar to like an Iridium or Starlink, you could have a satellite communicating or satellites communicating with one another. So if one satellite does not have access to a ground station, then it will relay your call to another satellite that's over a ground station, which then will connect it to the MNO's network.
Awesome. Thank you.
And I was throwing there too that once the like Legato and then other MSS spectrum gets usage, then it becomes like global spectrum rights, and that becomes a bit easier. And you're not trying to piecemeal it with all the different MNOs from different countries, right?
Well, Legato is specifically for the U.S. and Canada. But then if they, for example, if AST works out a deal with some of these other spectrum holders that have global coverage, like say an OmniSpace where they have more regions, then then you wouldn't have issues, connecting calls over water. But that, I mean, that's a very specific use case, whether it's maritime or if you're flying internationally, which I'm sure there'll be agreements between MNOs to figure out how to split that pie if they are using AST Space Mobile. But I think more importantly, if you're just off the coast, maybe it's maybe a few miles out, then you should be able to have service if you have AT&T or Verizon, which for most people, like if you're boating or fishing, that will be, I think, a game changer.
Awesome. Hayden, I think you were up next, and then Tyler's after that. What's up, man? How you doing?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, great. I just wanted to give a shout out to Anpanman and everybody who does a great DD for this company. Just to give you like my backstory, I started researching it, bought it at like 4 in the summer last year. Then it went to like 7 or 8, and I flipped it and thinking I was a genius, and it kept running. And so then I'm like, what is so interesting about this stock? I started researching the company, started finding you guys and everything. And once I figured out the business model, the wholesaler to the MNOs seemed great. Then I found out about the DoD, dual use cases that are out there. Everything just kept getting better and better.
Yeah.
And I started telling people at work about it. And now we got probably almost about $1 million collectively with us. My company, all invested in it. And I've got people calling me today saying, hey, is it too late? Should I put in more? I don't know. And anyway, I just wanted to say thank y'all. If it weren't for you guys, I probably would have been flooded out of my shares a long time ago. And because of an holding.
Congratulations.
So, yeah. Anyway, keep on keeping on.
Yeah, that's a great story. Yeah, it's as we say, like you do 5 minutes of due diligence, and you'll want to short the stock. If you do an hour, you'll want to mortgage your house, invest in it.
That's exactly right.
It's because it's I think it's a pretty. It's a big hump initially to get over, but once you do, then it's like you reach enlightenment. There's all these, whether it's the commercial use case, but then like as you mentioned before, like the military or the defense use case wasn't even a part of the thesis in 2022, 2023, even though the company had been working on it, and smart people like Katsi had caught on very early. I think Katz, I remember the post, Katsi would have these tweet threads of like dual use case and military, whether it's like backup GPS or radar or any number of enhancing communications for the warfighter, tracking assets. And he used to post tweets, and then people would reply like, you're crazy, or that doesn't make any sense, or you're just speculating. Which then, of course, fast forward today, it's like, hey, it's all there. It's all happening. Like there's 6 government contracts with the SDA, DOD, DIU, and we're going to get something with Golden Dome. Like everything that Katsi was uncovering back then that we speculated, but we as like non-technical people, it's like, oh, okay, this could make some sense, but I'm not sure like if it's how realistic it is. But then Katsi would be like, well, actually, that does make sense. This is why. And also you're missing like these 10 other reasons, these 10 other use cases, which is, it's great to see. But yeah, I love your story. Like there's, I think I've heard from a number of people where they've done other coworkers or friends and family invest in the stock. And then of course, during different periods of this investment cycle, it's led to awkward moments. Like, I remember when the stock was when it adjusted rallying again, especially after after Verizon and the stock took off. I remember I was joking with some of the Space Mob that some of you can actually go back to Thanksgiving and look at your family straight in the face, versus other times where perhaps you were ostracized for getting them into the stock that then, whether they bought at 6 or 7, went straight to 2. But and then I remember joking, like in a tweet, when Verizon went up, it's like some marriages were saved from this, and then alternatively, some marriages were ended because I guess maybe perhaps like people who were invested decided to leave their significant other because now they could move on. But anyway, that was a joke, kind of a dark joke. But yeah, thanks for coming up and sharing. That's really cool that you bought it for. I think a lot of people, that's pretty amazing that you flipped it, but then you got back in. So yeah, thanks for sharing.
Yeah, and just to touch back on something y'all touched on earlier, I flipped my shares back and forth, and doing the math over and over again, I'm kicking myself. I'm still happy that I'm in it, where I'm at, but trying to trade it was a terrible mistake. Buying and holding seems to be the best strategy at this point, and don't make the same mistakes I made.
Yeah, it's less stressful. You just like buy it and then don't look at it, and you can go about your day. It's funny because like I think Cook was telling me like the best days are when he goes surfing or he has no access to a phone, so he doesn't have to really think about it. Or I guess the other thing you can do is just put it in a separate account. Just open a brokerage account specifically for what you own and just put it there, and then don't have an online app. So that might be a better approach.
Yep, I might have to do that. Anyway, yeah, thanks a lot. It's been an interesting ride, and pretty much all those things happened to me. At one point, I was afraid to look at my wife in the eyes, and then at another point, I'm running to her. I'm like, guess what happened today? But
yeah, no, I think we all empathize.
Yeah, we've all been through 17 and $2. I didn't have to experience that drawdown, but buying back in at 25 and watching it go to 17 wasn't too great.
Yeah, but I think like it's those periods where if you've done the due diligence, you know what you own, like we say, the volatility is just all noise. Like it's just chop, right? And I think just focusing on the long term, like I guess I'll share this example. Like when so I had at peak in terms of warrants, I think I had 950,000 warrants, and so when September rolled around last year, obviously there was a warrant redemption, so I had to exercise, make a decision to sell some and exercise some, and so I sold enough warrants where I could exercise pretty close to maximum amount, but then putting aside some money, of course, for taxes. But then having exercised the warrants, just like a call option, it resets your clock, and so you basically have to hold the stock for at least a year for capital gains from that time of exercise of warrant. And so, these warrants on average, I think my cost basis was around $1, and I think at the peak they traded. I think they traded for like $28 or something. It was pretty nuts. But I did sell some, and then I was able to exercise into the position that stock position that I hold today. But the good thing about being able to exercise the warrants is that it made me take some amount of money off the table to set aside for taxes, and then I actually took a little more money off just to say that I did, because I think from a mental standpoint, it was just good to do that. And so, I still have a really large position, but then when we had the drawdown from the 30s all the way to, I guess it was like 17 or 18, it didn't really impact me because I was not long warrants anymore. So there was no running clock, and then I was just long commons. And so I was able to just ride that volatility all the way down, and it didn't really faze me because I knew what I held and I was confident, and clearly we had a big run up to 39, and then it was a pullback, which is pretty natural. Like those things happen. And I was able to buy back with some of the money I had set aside. I was able to buy back some shares relatively cheap, which is, when I tweet like the little character dancing, like I bought the dip, like, yeah, that's what I did. And it was good. Like I was able to increase my position. And as some of you guys know, like I also have shares in a tax advantage account. So I do trade those around from time to time. But I think just having a core position that you just don't touch, it's good. And having, like, if you're fully invested in this company in particular, like I definitely recommend selling some, especially like at these levels, like taking some profit and setting aside money for taxes and just putting capital aside. Cause there's kind of this like, therapeutic effect where you've accomplished something. Like I've taken profits, I've made some money. Maybe if you can, like take your cost basis out, like do something, because it gives you peace of mind that you did something. And so when there is a pullback, you can look back and say, oh, well, I actually took profits at 54 or 53, and I have money set aside, and if I want to, I can buy some of those shares back lower. Or if the stock runs to 60, like okay, because like should take some money out, and we do that. It actually provides this like moment of clarity for you where you don't really care about volatility because you took some profits, whether it's 10, 20, you kind of your position, whatever percentage you want to pick. But you've accomplished something, and that's kind of done, and you can move on. And B, when we do have volatility in the stock, like I can knock it off because it's like, oh, well, I freely come out of profits and capital to the side, and I can buy, can do whatever. I think for people who are invested, and by the way, like I have a tremendous amount of exposure to the company. It's now the largest piece of my net worth. Like at the same time, like I think for anybody who is, we joke about this, like an ASTS maxi. I do think it is healthy to take some level of profits and have that ability to mentally kind of ride the volatility and not worry about it. But when you're like fully invested and you haven't really done anything, it's really painful. And I think everybody has experienced this. Like when the stock is at all-time high and you're like euphoric, and maybe you do that thing where you buy more, but then it like draws down and you're kicking yourself for not only maybe buying a little more, but then having not sold anything, like basically done anything. That kind of eats away at you mentally. And so I think it's important for people to have discipline, set some goals, and, taking profits like never hurts. And yeah, you might miss out on even higher stock prices, but that's okay. It's like, that's just part of investing. And I think not always maximizing things, and, and this is where like people get in trouble where they want to be fully invested and fully exposed, and then they go beyond. They like enter into margin and they buy stock on leverage, which I recommend I have net against doing that, especially with a high volatility stock like AST, because you can, when you're invested in something that has high level volatility, you will have periods of drawdown, and those are the times when you don't want to have margin. You basically get tapped out and you have a margin call. Like the only times when you might utilize margin is like if you think the odds are really in your favor, and let's say like there's a big pullback and it's for reasons that don't make any sense, and maybe there's like all these great things that are coming up, and you're like, I'm gonna dabble in margin. I'm gonna have a slightly outsized position for the next, and you define it like next 4 or 5 days, and these are the levels. Like if the stock drops another 10%, then I'll just completely close out and call it a day. Or if the things happen and all goes well, then I will sell, I make some profits. I will sell enough to get back off of margin. So anyway, kind of went off on a tangent there, but hopefully that's helpful.
You got some hate now for even suggesting the sell word. No, I'm just, it's a healthy, rounded investor mindset.
The voice of reason. yeah, I think, I mean, look, you in the company, like, I know there's some zealots out there who are like, if anyone in the company sells like one share, then they whine about it. It's like, come on, like, I'll take Scott Wisniewski as an example. The guy was a former banker. He probably made $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 in salary when he was in banking, and then he probably had I would say, in terms of a bonus, $1 million, $2 million, maybe more, depending. But then he decided to leave his cushy job, although albeit like, required a lot of work, a job at Barclays to join this startup company. And, he's got a small family. I believe he has a few very young children. And, he has a family that lives not in Miami, but somewhere up north. And so he's sacrificing a lot of time of his personal time to, strike these strategic deals, get these financings happen. And he's only making $250,000 of salary, which that is a lot of money. But for a young family where you're commuting and, you've got a mom who I'm assuming his wife is probably taking care of the kids and up to her eyeballs and trying to manage everything. It's like, come on, the guy deserves to sell some shares to live a little more comfortably, whether that's like getting some help with the children or, buying something nice for his wife or whatever it is. Like, people have all kinds of reasons as to why they, from their own personal financial situation, they need to sell shares and maybe get some type of financial cushion, which I'd add, like, he sold, I think it was like less than 5% of his holdings. And the other thing is, like, these executives outside of Abel, because Abel doesn't take salary, nor does he get additional stock grants. But these executives, they do get re-upped some level amount of shares every year. And I did tweet about this before, like, our key executives at the company, they actually don't make that much salary. Like, the bread is getting buttered is their stock compensation. Because, like, their salaries of $250,000, like, that's pretty much peanuts for these level executives. Like, if you look at, I remember I was looking at like Intuitive Machines. I think the CEO, CFO, those executives get paid like $700,000 or $800,000 of salary, and then they get stock grants on top of that. Whereas at AST, like, they're really managing the cash burn, because obviously, do I take more salary or do I build another satellite? So that's kind of like how they're thinking about the business. So I think just taking a clue from the executives too, like, unless you have the mental fortitude and you're financially okay to not take profits, I think it's okay to, like, you can have conviction in the stock, but you have a lot of profit and perhaps like maybe long-term gains. It's okay it can be good mentally to take some level of profits, because then it gives you a bit more clarity in terms of thought and how you're thinking about a situation. Whereas I've seen people, especially whether if you're dabbling in short-term options and you're on margin, then people can go to pretty dark places. Like if a stock isn't working for you, or if it's going against you. So anyway, I'll stop there.
I see Tyler was next up. But man, how you doing?
Hey everyone, how's it going? Hey, so first of all, I just want to say, Anpanman, I think everybody in the Space Mob, absolutely loves you and appreciates everything that you're doing. And that goes to Katsy as well. And so many other people that actually, in a lot of ways, changed my life. I think in a kind of a cool thing is back in 2021, this is before obviously Blue Walker 3 was, launched. I kind of learned about, I told my wife, I said, gorgeous, I need to go find a 100x stock. But that's what I need to go do. I need to go find a stock that's just going to 100x. And so I started looking around on Twitter and on stock twits. And the next thing you know, I'm like seeing this, stuff about ASTS. And I'm like, I'm going to check this one out. And one thing that was interesting, I got to just say, the thing that like always impressed me about AST was the way that Abel decided to send a mobile device he decided to launch a mobile device and keep the satellite on the ground and do all the tweaks on the ground while the mobile device was basically orbiting the Earth. And I just thought, man, that is so fucking genius. Like that is amazing. And so, and I will say, Katsia was a big reason why he would go in there and FinTwits, and he would always answer these questions for us. And we're all kind of noobs and all that kind of stuff. We're sitting here just trying to learn a little bit about engineering. Have no idea what the hell we're talking about. But one thing that I just just truly appreciated was how much Katsi understood about the engineering, about the actual tech, about the science of it all. And it gave me the confidence to say, you know what, this is actually a company that's going to do it. Like this is, and if y'all remember, Mark, there's a guy named Marshall. I'll never forget this video that was out. A guy named Marshall, who was, I think he was a consultant for
Dave Marshak.
Yes,
Dave Marshak,
Yes.
RKF Consulting. Yeah.
Yes, that date. Oh my gosh, that video. I probably watched that video 20 times, man. It was just one of those videos that I felt really, discussed the magic of AST. And so, naturally I started telling everybody about it. I got in around 7. I watched it go to 14. Then I watched it drop down, back to 7. And I thought, oh, I have another opportunity. And then sure enough, we all experienced the drop into what, I remember hitting 197. I thought to myself, fuck, man, is this going to go bankrupt? Like this legitimately is, going into the floor. But thankfully my wife was, always encouraging. And I ended up actually picking up more shares at, $3, and I picked up some more at $6. I don't have anything like, Katsi's, 77,000 shares or whatever, or your, whatever it is, couple 100,000 or whatever it is shares. But I will say, another interesting fact, I found out that I was going to be a father on the day that Blue Walker 3 was launching. So that was a momentous day for me in a lot of ways.
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love it. I was.
Did you have a boy? Did you have a boy or a girl? Oh, did I drop out?
No, I can hear you. Tyler seemed to have dropped out.
Oh, I asked him if he had a boy or a girl, and then my next question was, did you name them Blue Walker 3?
Oh, that would have been funny. I think he's request. No, somebody else is requesting in. Yeah, it would have been. I don't know. Maybe if he gets back on, he can answer. But sorry, Tyler. Jump in and jump off the stage and then come back in, and I'll let you back on. You can hear me. Sorry, what were we gonna say, Anpanman?
Oh yeah, no, I agree with what he said. Like I think Katsi talked about this too. Like it was a genius that the company put the cell phone out in space to develop the technology, and then they kept the satellite on the ground. So that was a really smart way to iterate and develop the technology in a very cost-effective manner. And so just by that alone, it just gave you insight into basically the engineering genius of Abel and Dr. Ren and others.
Hey man, hold on a minute. There's a few people in front of you, so if you just want to stay on mute for a little bit, and we'll get to you when a couple other people ask questions. I think Fling, or sorry, you were still going. Yeah, I agree. The when I heard about the cell phone in space and the satellite on the ground thing, I was like, that is so smart. I mean, I don't know. It was one of those cool stories, like when you're first reading about the company and you hear about something like that. It's like, wow, that's genius. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I will add one more thing. So that Dave Marshak video, just for like background. So funny enough, like that there was when the company went public via SPAC, they had a call with research analysts. This is like for sell side analysts who are contemplating, who were either part of the deal, their banks were part of the deal, or who were contemplating initiating coverage. And so that was basically like a teach-in. And that video, they also shared, I think, with some of the investors at the pipe. And so I forgot who I got it through, but I remember through various connections, I was able to get the entire video. And so then that specific part with Dave Marshak, who, as some of you guys know, works at he is actually one of the few respected consultants in the satellite industry. Won't name the other one, but he used to be an engineer at TerraStar. And so that specific segment, I thought, like for people out, for retail investors, I think this will be very helpful to actually hear.
It seems its network is not too good that way. It seems its network is not too good.
Anyway, so I think having that video out there was really helpful for people. So I cut that video out of the entire video and I put it on YouTube and then, shared it with everyone. So that's the background of that. You can still see it today for those people who are interested.
Yeah, I need to find that video. I have not. This one I haven't seen. So somebody knows or has a link to that and throws in the comments. That'd be cool. And then Fling, I can't reach your full name, but Fling, you were up next, I think, and then Mitch was after you.
Yeah, it's a play on a name in Lord of the Rings. It's like Fingolfin. He's some High King elf thing. It's really nerdy. But anyway, appreciate everything everyone here does. I guess my story is kind of interesting or not, but I played a lot of World of Warcraft back in the day, and I had a buddy who was messaging me about this ASTS stock in March of 2022 and said, there's some SpaceX agreement or something. I'm buying some calls on this company. And I was like, who the hell is ASTS? What's going on? And I started looking into the company. I bought my first 1,000 shares, I think at like $12 or $13, and then just immediately watched it go down since from that time. Kept averaging down for a while until it got to like 4, I think was my last buy. And I was like, God, I'm down like 80 or 90% on this. My wife's going to kill me if she finds out. And I'm going to go buy some other stuff. But I held it, and mainly because of you and other people like Kook and Katsy. Anyway, when we started the run-up last summer, I kept buying and got to about 30,000 share position that I've held the whole way. So I'm at, I don't know what, like 1.5 million now, which is, some pretty life-changing money, So I just wanted to say thanks so much, man. Really appreciate everything you do.
Yeah, thanks for coming up. That's so funny. Like you found out about the stock on a World of Warcraft chat.
Yeah, pretty funny. Unfortunately, my buddy didn't stay in the stock, so now I message him about it, and he's like, son of a bitch, But yeah, random whisper on a video game made me a multimillionaire. Pretty cool.
Yeah, well, like we say, if you like the stock at 12, you're gonna love it at 4.
Yeah,
so that's good. You stuck with it. There's some pretty bad stories out there too, and this is why, for example, I saw Tut on here a little while ago, but that's why he and I try to stay above the fray, and I try not to engage with consultant who shall not be named. But every now and then I kind of get fed up, and then I'll just unleash on the guy. But the reason why Tut and I will do that, and Kook and Katsy, and I guess quite frankly the entire community, is that there are, for every story where people are they had conviction, they held on, and perhaps they added, there's quite a few stories where people actually sold at the bottom, which is quite painful. And there's one particular person on Reddit, for example, who I think he's probably in his mid or late 20s, but he actually had conviction and had been investing and kept averaging into his position. And then I think the FUD just got to him. And this is back, I think literally he sold near the bottom, not at the bottom, but at low 2s, and locked in, I think, a few $100,000 of loss, which was, he was down 95% or something. And he had leaps too. But then I think he kind of became famous on the Reddit because when the stock started coming back, you clearly, was upset and kicking himself. Then I think he just posted recently, maybe it was like middle of last week, where he was like, had I just held on to my position, just the calls alone would have been, I think, worth $3.5 million. But then, fortunately, I believe there is still there is a positive end to the story, because I think he did buy back in, and he's now doing well. I at least I believe he covered his previous loss and now is up. But yeah, back then it wasn't easy, and there were quite a few people who were really, had high level conviction and rode it all the way down and were buying, and then they just kind of had this breaking point. And this was like, I think for a lot of people, when the company announced a deal with Google, the strategic investment from Vodafone, AT&T, Google, but then they had to raise $100 million of equity to basically get that deal done. That was kind of the last straw for some folks, because they're like, how can you guys raise equity? You just got this strategic investment, and then you're doing this equity raise, which, it was a marketed deal, which given the company, the interest level from institutions, which back then wasn't much, institutional investors. So they had to price that deal down. I think it was like 20, almost 30% discount, which is really bad. And this is why we talk about like how the company has now they don't really do marketed offerings. They just like use the ATM from time to time. But like that was a breaking point for a lot of people, which now we know the company had to do that to tie over what eventually, get the company through what would eventually be Verizon coming on board just a few months later, which of course completely, changed the story in terms of validating what the company was doing, but also bringing in more attention on the corporate and government side. But yeah, that was unfortunately just a painful, necessary capital raise that had happened, which I think, as we all learned, with any growth company that's doing something that's never been done for, raising capital, especially if you're a public, you trade in the public markets versus like some of these private companies that don't have to report financials or progress or any of that stuff. It's a very different beast, right? And so, yeah, I'm glad to hear that you held through and you've got this life-changing position, which is great. But congrats. Thanks for coming and sharing.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Take care.
So we got Mitch up next. You've been waiting for a minute, man.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Anpanman, I just want to say, every time I wake up in the morning and you're at the top of my X speed and you have in all caps something mega bullish, or at least feeling like it, makes my damn day. So right. Thank you very much. It's been a really fun last almost sharing now.
Yeah.
But I'll just, because people have been doing it, I'll share a little bit. So I found out about ASTS by accident. I used to go onto a bunch of Reddit threads like value investing. Of course, I would just see who's making a funny post on Wall Street bets. And then there was some other one I would look for. I think it was like penny stocks or something. And someone, I bet you it was Kevin, Defiant Client Kevin, made a post saying that pretty much summarized Verizon's on board, or no, AT&T's on board, something. DA's coming in. They're basically going to get money by now. And I did like the 5 minutes of DD. And back then, I know you say 5 minutes DD, if you won't buy it, you'll short it. I was like, oh no, this makes sense. So I put like,
well, you're a smart guy, so you don't need the 60 minutes.
Well, smart enough to have bought it. And the thing is, I kind of got scared, because that same year I had gotten messed up upside down on a biotech that I had been misled about, which I won't go into. But basically, so I originally put in 50 grand up front on, I think it was around $5 a share. And I got nervous and I sold half of it the next day before it even really moved, I think. Or at least like right before the market had opened. And next thing I know, that position obviously goes crazy. It goes up to the 38s. And at that point, I have like a financial advisor on my right saying, hey, you got to sell. It's pre-rev. This isn't, you can't trust it against Starlink, all that stuff. And I've got a buddy over here that works at a wealth management firm saying the same thing. Like, look, man, no one ever went broke locking in profits. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess know enough. It's only been a month, so I did so. And ever since then, I bought back in eventually later, but ever since then, I've just been frustrated knowing that I sold half right before the run up and then I sold at all. Because now that I've been reading every day for hours, yours, Catsy's, Defiant Client, Kook's fun little weekly report that summarizes all the things that have happened, I kick myself every day thinking, man, you are such a bitch for having listened to anyone but yourself when you bought it in the first place, right? So, but that's kind of been the lesson. It's made me realize that I've got to start being more trusting of my conviction and not think that other people, that are throwing FUD around necessarily know anything. They might have agendas. They might just not know. They might just be biased and have a negative lens just because they do. And that's not to name names, but we all know who we're talking about here. So, I guess where I'm going with that is, thank you. Now, here's my question for you, and it's not really one that I think anyone can perfectly answer. I don't expect it, but I do have a question regarding. So Palantir had a pretty crazy re-rate, and it's still technically going up. And if I remember correctly, from all the different posts I've seen on X and etc., it really didn't have a noticeable revenue jump that made any of its market capitalization make sense. So, in my opinion, I can't help but feel that if a defense company, if ASTS becomes branded in the short term before it can give commercial service as a defense layer for our government, then I can't help but feel that this is just potentially another. I'm not going to say it goes to 300 billion, but I can't help but feel it doesn't really have a reason to drop without major, mess ups in space. Space is hard. I get that. So that has been something that for me, I wanted to make sure I'm not crazy here. I mean, did even the big behemoth Palantir need major revenue and contracts being signed every week to jump as much as it did? I mean, do you know?
I don't know Palantir closely, so I can't say. But in regards to AST, like I think now people are beginning to understand the dual use case, and that what was already like a massive TAM on the commercial side, if you look at the defense side, that could be a TAM almost as big. And so I think the contracts that we have so far, we only have a $20 million contract and a $43 million contract. But, if you talk to the company, they'll tell you like these are kind of the initial proof of concept stages where the government agencies will see what the capabilities are, how does it fit, and then those contracts can then start growing into hundreds of millions of dollars in terms of potential revenue, and that's outside of what we all speculate is Golden Dome, those types of applications. But I think that's where the street is primarily pricing in the commercial opportunity, which is a bit more straightforward. Although shorts would tell you it's not straightforward, because shorts will say, how many people are going to actually adopt this service, and how much are they actually going to pay? Like paying the same price as 2 cups of coffee is like too much. Like you'll get into these, or you'll hear these arguments which make zero sense. But I think on the government side, like it's kind of the known unknown. Like, yeah, we know that the technology would be really great for these various use cases, but it's unclear how much the government is going to pay for them. And then outside of that, it's like it's not just the U.S. government. We just saw like Singapore, which is a small country but has a big budget. They're evaluating AST SpaceMobile for defense use cases, and I think the establishment of Satco JV with Vodafone in Europe, I think you'll probably start to see some European defense interest as well. Because I mean, we already know that AST is like doing some stuff with NATO, so it would be a natural extension for them to evaluate it for European defense applications. But yeah, you don't, and that's the fun thing about investing. I mean, you don't need to see like the arguments that a bear will make is that this company is pre-revenue, which by the way, it won't be in the next 6 months, but they'll try to do like at a valuation multiple of whatever de minimis revenues we've had over the last 12 months. Like it's well overvalued, but as we all know, like investing is not backwards looking, it's forward looking. So what is the opportunity? It's just like, I mean, you sound like you have experience in biotech. There's plenty of pre-revenue companies there, but it's a matter of like, how big is the opportunity of the population of the drug that you're developing, and what is going to be the take rate? And then, is this a drug that people take once and then they're done, or is it something that they're going to be on for like the rest of their lives? But that's how people, you have pre-revenue biotechs that are worth billions of dollars because what they have is promising and it's on the come, like it's about to happen. And so I think for AST, as I'd mentioned before, like the military use case was not even part of the company's lexicon, nor were investors talking about it up until basically last year and then this year in a big way. And so I think that's a big part of the re-rate, because now you've got a business that is diversified. It's got commercial, it's got government meaning, like FirstNet, first responder stuff. And then you've got defense. And so being able to leverage the same constellation for these different applications is huge. And so I think just like for NVIDIA, I think Cat Steve is the one who started using NVIDIA as an example. And I think Piranha as well. Those semiconductors were first thought to be only graphics accelerators, but yet now various applications, because they are the best in terms of computing, now they're being used for AI and other applications, which is why the company trades at this astronomical valuation, which I think you've got to look at the future potential of what AST can do. You've got this like global constellation. It's basically a communications platform that can leverage low band spectrum, and then the next constellation will leverage mid band spectrum. But you're offering broadband connectivity platform, which then you can build applications on, whether that's connectivity to consumers, it could be Internet of Things, tracking devices, robots, any number of those types of applications. But then you've got also military connecting warfighters or backup GPS, or doing electronic warfare like jamming, spoofing. I mean, there's any number of things. But yeah, what is that worth, right? And that's only the stuff that we're speculating as, quote unquote, retail investors. But it doesn't include all the things that the company's working on, which, or they haven't even conceived, which it's funny. Like if you talk with management about military, like they would tell you that 2-3 years ago, they were being used, or they had conversations for a few applications, but then recently, especially like post Verizon, we learned like the phone didn't ring off the hook. Like they're now included in a lot of other meetings and evaluations for other use cases. One obviously is Golden Dome, and so yeah, I think that's the potential. Like as Kook would say, the white space here is enormous. And so how do you value that? And is it are people looking at EBITDA multiples based off of 2027, 2028? What is that EBITDA projection based on? Is it based on just commercial? Does it include a little bit of government? Does it include some defense? And then, there's probably other applications that we're not even thinking about. Like, I remember having a conversation with Scott back in 2021, and he was telling me, hey, these phased arrays, like it's not just for listening for signals like down on the earth, but you can also listen to things out in space. And that got me thinking, it's like, oh, I didn't know that you could actually go the other way. Yeah, there's a lot of different cool applications that I'm sure I haven't thought about, and probably Katzy has, but he probably hasn't shared all of them. But yeah, how do you value that? And so that's the fun part, where it's like, how do you value that, and what can it become, which is great. It's not like we're it's not like you're investing in a restaurant chain and it's a matter of how many stores can they open. Like this thing is transformative in so many different ways.
No, absolutely. And, you know, one of the use cases that has kind of come up to me just from light reading about another company called Gorilla Technology Group is the concept of smart cities. I mean, that to me just sounds like a direct use case. If it's going to be a smart city, it's a literal city built on IoT. And reading Catsy's long, 18 sometimes page posts on X, it sounds like this is the sort of thing that you would need, that kind of coverage for at all times from these satellites, because the handovers, every 4 or 5 seconds from Starlink would just decimate any ability to have continuity. But I guess with ours, or when I say ours, ASTs, it sounds like that's not even really a thing that could pop up because it's still a side case, or what's the word? It's supplemental, I should say, supplemental coverage.
Right. Yeah. I mean, what's cool though is like Legato. I mean, this is the elegance and sorry, I'm in a car right now and there's an ambulance going by. So sorry for the noise. But what's cool about the company is like, as I was mentioning before, the defense use case was not really in Lexicon before, and then Legato too. But Legato was something that came out of the blue in January, and it's something that me as an event-driven investor and also a kook, like we knew about Legato as an asset, but never really contemplated the company buying Legato, the spectrum usage rights for 80 years for L-band, which basically transforms the company, right? So yeah, we provide supplemental coverage for cellular devices, but then with Legato, you're actually going to provide not supplemental but primary coverage across the entire country, whether the US or Canada. And so it means that you can blanket connectivity even in cities, in dead zones, hot, whatever it is, right? And so when talking about like what you were saying before about connectivity, like in smart cities, like, it's not just if there's cell towers that are providing terrestrial service, Legato can also be used to augment that, right? And that's the cool thing about this about this investment is like the company, this is not something that anyone was even thinking about, but the company, like if you speak with management, like they had been watching Legato for a number of years and it was kind of in their plan to eventually make a play for it, which once they had the capital to do it, they did. And now, there's a lot of really cool things, whether that's just providing even fixed wireless service, but then also around government use cases for defense and Golden Dome and any number of things where Legato is going to come in quite handy.
So another question for you, Kuiper. Is Kuiper currently able to or just operating with fixed wireless? Is that part of their offering and function?
Yeah, Kuiper is the equivalent of Starlink fixed wireless for home, right? Like McDishy, Flatface, or whatever. That's what Kuiper's going to do. Like when they build out the entire constellation, that's going to be for fixed wireless. If you're if you want an alternative to cable or fiber, then you could subscribe to Kuiper. So that's really competing with the core business of what Starlink does. It's not direct to device, which when you see the picture of Abel and Jeff Bezos and Adriano Cisneros together, that could the speculation can run wild in terms of like, oh, I wonder if Kuiper and AST could work together, or maybe maybe Bezos or Virgin or Amazon might make an investment in AST, or maybe it's more for Amazon to work with AST. Because the other thing is like for some of this government work, you're going to need backend infrastructure. So whether that's Amazon Web Services or AWS or Microsoft Azure, there's a whole host of parties that it would make sense for AST to work with. But yeah, Kuiper is different than what we're doing.
So I guess, I can see why everyone is speculating, because it would almost make you think it's like another Waymo, right? Where Uber and Google invest together for a competitor to FSD Teslas, robotaxis. So I guess I can see why the speculation's been so rampant. I was trying to figure out what that was about for a while, and now I get it.
I don't think anybody knows, by the way.
Right. It's still
But
speculative.
it was just, yeah. But it's kind of funny because like the Bears would say, ASD is an inconsequential company, like, but then it's like, oh, Bell's meeting at Blue Origin headquarters in Kent, Washington. So I wonder what that's about. I mean, obviously we're the biggest commercial customer outside of Kuiper and the Department of Defense for Blue Origin. But yeah, there's a whole host of ways that we could work with any number of Bezos's companies or him personally.
So, and I'll let you go off this last question. Something that was kind of eating at me was trying to figure out why AST was able to purchase Legato or be in the position to win, the spectrum through lease, purchase, whatever, if there are other players like SpaceX, Starlink. Like, how does that even happen? You would almost assume that the higher bidder, if they were higher, would probably win that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So part of it is technology and part of it is business, right? So on the technology side, as Katsi has laid out elegantly over the years, our satellites are really large. We have a very large phase array, right? This large aperture that can efficiently beam down signal and do it in such a way that does not cause interference, right? Because it's very precise. Versus like Starlink, where you have a very small phased array, it beams down a very wide signal and it can't be very precise, and so it's subject to a lot of causing interference. And so, so what's the issue with Legato? Legato spectrum is next to the same spectrum that GPS uses, the GPS system, also some defense applications as well. And so the concern for Legato, when they tried to utilize that spectrum, not for MSS use, satellite use, but they tried to get it. They got it approved for terrestrial use. Is that concern with GPS and defense? The Department of Defense is that it would cause interference with those applications, and in particular GPS. Obviously, nowadays, like every device, everybody relies on GPS. Whether that's on your phone or your car, it's a critical service that if there's any interference to that could be catastrophic, right? And so enter Starlink. If they wanted to, get the spectrum usage rights with Legato, the way that their satellites are architected and the system are architected, I think you would probably have the same, if not worse, interference concerns. But then steps into the picture AST Space Mobile, which has these very large satellites, which are architected, from first principles to beam down clean signals that don't cause interference. And so it just happens, to be at the right place at the right time. Legato had tried to launch a terrestrial fixed wireless service for, I don't know, a second or third time iteration, and was basically financially in trouble. And then we came in and said, hey, why don't we work together? Because we've got these great satellites that can utilize your spectrum, and we can monetize them. We will pay you this, which is candidly a very cheap fee up front in terms of the penny warrants, and then the payments to Inmarsat, and then the annual $80 million payments. But then, which is relative to the value of the spectrum, those are basically like peanuts. But then we actually proposed to give them, I forget the exact number, I think it's like 12.5% of all North American revenues from the businesses that we built. And so for them, that upside was tremendous, right? Because they saw the ability of our satellites to properly use that spectrum in a way that doesn't cause interference. And so technology wise, we were the right fit. Outside of Starlink and AC, there's a bunch of legacy players, but I don't think that anybody else has the technology to properly use the L-band spectrum. But then the business model too. So I think, as we've seen with Elon Musk, like he's he can be a difficult business partner to work with. And so I think there's a certain level of trust that Bell is able to garner with other business partners, clearly there's like over 50 global MNOs that have decided to work with us. Like for example, Verizon chose AST over Starlink. Part of that, a big part of that is technology, but a big part of it also is business model, because Starlink is competitive with Verizon's fiber and home internet service, but then also just you've got Elon Musk, who has ambitions to potentially get into basically to compete with global MNOs. That's hard to go into partnership with them. So what T-Mobile did, I think, was very short-sighted. And so they've I've tweeted about it before, so I won't go through it all here, but there's huge conflicts there over the long run. Like, they might play nice together today, but I don't know how T-Mobile is going to work with Starlink 2 or 3 years from now. I think that relationship is going to be pretty untenable. But from a business model perspective, I think AST is just a more natural partner to work with than Starlink. Because I think what was quite telling, whether that was the Twitter buyout where Elon offered or agreed to a definitive, he signed a definitive agreement to buy Twitter, but then he tried to back out of it, and then he tried to cut the price. People remember those things, right? And so I think for anyone who is contemplating going into business with Elon, we saw it recently with the fallout with Trump, things can quickly change. And so I think for a party like Cerberus and Fortress, the technology made sense, but also from a business perspective, why do I want to go with Starlink, who's going to be working with T-Mobile? I don't know if I'm going to even be able to negotiate some cut of those revenues, but then I'm going to be able to get be part of the business that's going to sell through Verizon, AT&T, and I get a cut of that. Like, that's way more attractive. But then also, like, this is a business partner that I can trust. Like, they stick by their word. And for Legato, they were entering into bankruptcy, and they needed an exit plan, and this plan made the most sense. I think, quite candidly, there was probably an element of it was a good fit for all the parties, but also from our side of the table, I think there was a lot of luck and timing, right? Because they hit this financial wall, and then they needed help, and we were able to get in and basically get the rights to use the spectrum for a song. Just super cheap. Like, whether you believe Legato, they, in a terrestrial use case for fixed wireless, they think the spectrum's worth $39 billion, which, I think where we are looking to use the spectrum, it's probably going to be worth maybe half that. But then who knows? Maybe as we expand applications, utilizing Legato spectrum, you could realize the full value of $39 billion. And so maybe, that's part of the market re-rating our stock today, that everyone's now saying, oh, hey, this is significant upside that's not being priced in. Like, if I do a sum of the parts valuation, you're telling me that I can buy AST Space Mobile, and the value of AST is Legato, which they just got, the bankruptcy court approved the disclosure schedule, and that deal, the plan is going to be confirmed in August. But I'm basically buying the stock today for that spectrum value, and then I get the commercial, defense, and government business for free. That sounds pretty good. I'll buy some stock today. So that's like a classic sum of the parts hedge fund optionality valuation case that someone would make. But yeah, that's one way you could look at it.
So I got sorry, did I cut you off, Mitch?
No, you didn't. I appreciate it. I just wanted to say thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming up. Thanks for coming up. So I just time check on you. It's been 2.5 hours. I got 2 more people that wanted to speak, but I was going to stop accepting new speakers. Yeah. I think you're probably close to home. All right, cool. And then as an intermission break, King Tut had an important question. He wanted to hear your thoughts on Tim Farrar. He wanted to know 8-Man's thoughts on those.
8-Man, yeah, I remember Chris, who had joined earlier, when I did that YouTube with Amit, he called me 8-Man, or someone called me 8-Man. My thoughts on Tim Farrar, like, is that a serious question?
No, it's Tut's probably just trolling. I was just doing that. If you want to know his thoughts, look at his replies, everyone. You'll see his thoughts. All right, so I had 400 kg, you were next, and then Farm, you're up ahead. 400 kg still on there, man? You've been waiting for a long time. Give you a second.
You probably passed out.
Mitch to London? No? All right, Farm, go ahead, man.
Hey, Jacob, thanks for hosting the spaces. And Anpanman, just thank you for your contagious conviction on the stock. A buddy and I that I used to swap biotech ideas with put AST on my radar, and I like to get off of social media and do my research, the old-fashioned way. And I kept coming back to Twitter, obviously, because I'm addicted to Twitter, and I kept seeing your posts, Kook's, Tuss, everybody's posts, and I'm like, I don't believe, but I believe that these guys believe because of everything that they're saying about the stock, So it's like, I didn't have the conviction, but I believed you believed, And so I remember my first purchase was the day it skyrocketed. I think I got it just under 36. And I thought, I just need exposure to this stock. I just need to get in because I'm afraid it's going to go to the moon, And I've been lucky because as my conviction rose, the stock price was inversely, going downward, and I was able to add and get my average way down, which was awesome. So just a huge thanks to you for everything that you guys have done and put out there for free, this time and stuff. I'm working OT right now at home, and just to have this spaces on makes the time go by so much quicker. So that's kind of my background. Amp, what do you think about the Vodafone Idea deal? I looked it up, and there were some bankruptcy issues. There were some money issues with the company. Can you speak to that? Do you know what's going on with that?
I did read a little bit about that. I don't know much about Vodafone Idea, but it is a joint venture between Vodafone and Idea, so hence the name. But then also the Indian government owns like 49% of it. So, but yeah, I think that company has hit like some financial issues, and so I think part of this deal is to help differentiate Vodafone and Idea, and perhaps give it another avenue of growth, so it can go get more subscribers, because it's the third largest carrier in India, but it's third. I mean, third largest is still big. It's 212 million subscribers, but compared to the two larger ones, Jio and Bharti Airtel, I think it is smaller. And so I think, yeah, I mean, I don't really have much to add beyond that. I mean, it's a very large market, and I think for Vodafone Idea, it's going to be a good differentiator. And more importantly, I think versus like supplemental coverage, which I think is helpful in India. For India, it's really going out to I think it's like 450 million folks who don't have any internet access whatsoever. And so it's almost like pursuing business in Africa, right? Where there's parts of India that don't have any internet connectivity. And so I don't think it's like your typical M&O deal. This one is really going to be about expanding coverage and bring new subscribers, I think. But yeah, beyond that, I don't really have much to add. I probably should like read up a bit more, but candidly, for me, I outside of like the handful of like key profitable markets that AST now kind of has a lock on, these other markets are additional growth drivers, and then it's going to expand the TAM. But these markets are going to be ones that the company gets to perhaps 1 to 3 years from now, because there's so many markets that they're going to have to roll out and execute, that these are all going to be in phased approaches. So for example, like when you see Starlink, they'll say, hey, we just added connectivity to Nigeria, or we like to welcome this country. It's because like this stuff takes time, like not just regulatory standpoint, but having infrastructure in place and then turning on the service, making sure they have enough capacity. So for AST, like it's almost like an insurmountable wall of opportunity. Like there's that, like on one hand, people will all want them to move as fast as they can, but there's also like some level of limitations to scale. Like rolling out a service in X amount of countries over a certain period of time, like you can only do so much, right? So, I think it's good that they continue to have this cadence of adding MNOs, and once I think we get closer to the service having initial launch, I think you're going to see then more definitive agreements, like these partnerships turn into more commercial definitive agreements once, because I for the company, it benefits them to wait to ink these deals because the economics go more into your favor once the service is up and running. But yeah, it's those are my initial thoughts. I don't know that much about the company, but yeah, there's actually quite a few people, I guess, from India tweeting about it. So I should probably go read some of those threads.
Thanks, Amp. I appreciate it. Just one more thing. If you guys are new here, this is a wonderful, wonderful investment community. I've been doing this for about 25 years. I've never met a group of people that are as kind and generous with their time. I've met guys in real life here in Arizona, in Phoenix. Corey and I are both pharmacists, so we connected that way and became fast friends. We play Call of Duty online. It's just a fun community. If you're new, hang around and stick around. I think you'll, if anything, you'll learn something new, and that could be the best part of it. So thanks, guys.
Hey man, thanks for coming up. Yeah, when I learned you guys are both pharmacists, then it all made sense as to like why you're crazy.
Appreciate it, dude. See you guys later.
Take care.
All right, man. There's nobody else requested either, so I appreciate you spending your drive home with us. I think you got to be close to home, right?
Yeah. No, thank you. I'm actually crossing the Brooklyn Bridge right now. No, thank you, Jacob, for hosting. Because for everyone, I reached out to Jacob and I was like, "Hey, are you free? do you mind hosting this? Because I have 4 hours to kill, or at the time 3 hours to kill, and I can't obviously manage people while I'm driving. That would be bad." But thanks, Jacob, for taking the time. I hope this is fun, and for me, this is great because it went by like in a blink of an eye. So what was going to be a very painful drive back by myself ended up being very enjoyable.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's fun, man. I like some of the stuff, like hearing like some of the where the A started from. Some of that stuff, I just it's kind of like legend stuff. You don't like, everybody's just doing it. So I like that. I love hearing people's stories about where they're coming in and investing and different ideas of that too. And there's a couple guys that kind of got you really like some interesting questions that I like. Oh, all right, yeah. Where is that next idea of like, why doesn't the gateway? Why maybe would the gateway not work over water initially, stuff like that. So I enjoy it. I learn a lot from these too. So I appreciate it, man. I'm personally burnt out after 2.5 hours, so I'm gonna call it here too, unless you're still wanting to go.
No, let's call it. But thanks everyone for coming and killing time with us, because that's what we did, which is good. But I agree with you. I will say, like, after just following this company for 5 years, it is helpful to listen to these spaces or do reading or just talk with people, because like whether it's Katsy, I'm always learning something new from him, or Kook Spaces, or even like having new people just come up and ask questions. Like I learn a lot myself, and I think like I'll just say this in closing. When people say thank you for sharing, it's actually like we're so happy, like Kook and I and Katsy and others, because we were like in the beginning we were like, wow, this is an amazing company, but no one knows about it, and kind of felt alone. And so I think now that the community has grown and obviously the awareness has spread and people really understand the story, it's just really great to see. And I don't think any of us would have had the conviction to invest and hold throughout this entire journey without the support of others. And whether that's confirmatory due diligence or just even having a laugh with someone, like on a shitty day when the stock is down and just, someone's about to like jump off of a cliff. It's like, hey, just laugh a little. Like we've done the work. There's like, the market is down or the company is down for whatever reason. Like just having people remind you that this is why you own the company. These are the reasons. Yeah. These are the concerns. And yeah, it's like what we talk about, like short thesis, the short thesis selling points are actually milestones. It's like, yeah, if you think about it a different way, yeah, there's all these potential issues, but those are milestones that the company is actively working on and knocking them down one by one. And so you've just got to change. Like sometimes it's helpful to have a friend to help you get over that hump and change the way that you're thinking. And so, so yeah, that's why having an investing community, investing cult, can be helpful. But yeah, thanks everyone for joining. This has been great, and we'll do it again soon sometime. I'll just let this run for a while because I know it cuts off early. But thanks again, Jacob, and we'll talk again.
Thanks for listening to the AST Space Mobile podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest news about AST Space Mobile, make sure to subscribe. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.
We're doing something very, very big. And I think with this technology, we can really affect billion lives.
AST Space Mobile is the only company that has proven technology to deliver cellular broadband connectivity directly from space to your everyday smartphone.
People will just basically turn their phone and be seamless, regardless of where you are. We don't want the user even to know that it's connected by satellite. Our role is to bring this into reality, always in partnership with the MNOs.
Listen. Waffles.